හරිම සුළුයි.
Tonight on First at 9 this Thursday the 21st of December 2023. Development drive. Districts allocated over 11.2 billion rupees through the decentralized budget after 3-year hiatus, reveals the President. Plans to recommence the halted foreign currency funded projects. Sri Lanka's call. Russian envoy says Sri Lanka has to decide on collaborating with Russia's Rosatom on nuclear energy. Insufficient. CBSL governor highlights the need for better tax collection, says more people should fall within the tax net. 2024 and beyond. Colombo Port expected to be digitalized, reveals the Minister of Ports, Shipping and Aviation. Highlights plans in making Sri Lankan Airlines a vibrant airline in the future.
ඔබේ විශ්වාසය දිනු සෙන්සුරයින් දැන් ළඟමැති ෆාමසියෙන් ලබාගත හැක.
නියම මෝල්ට් සාරය සමග මැලිබන් මෝල්ට් ටයිම් රුපියල් 750ක් පමණයි.
This is AdaDerana First at 9, live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening and welcome to AdaDerana First at 9. I'm AdaDerana joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and around the world. Now in your top story tonight, President Ranil Wickremesinghe revealed that over 11.2 billion rupees will be allocated via the decentralized budget of 2024 and that the money will be released to the district secretaries within the first week of January next year. These remarks were made by the President at the District Coordination Committee meeting today. Speaking in this regard, President Wickremesinghe further added that this allocation through the budget comes in after a hiatus of 3 years.
A meeting with the District Coordinating Committee chairpersons was held this morning under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe. During the meeting, President Wickremesinghe announced that the district decentralized budget for this year amounts to 11.25 billion rupees, marking a significant allocation after a hiatus of 3 years. The funds are slated to be disbursed to all district secretaries during the initial week of January.
අවුරුදු 3ක් රජයෙන් ප්‍රාග්ධන වියදම් කරේ නැහැ. ඒ වැඩ කටයුතු නොකරපු නිසා ඇත්ත වශයෙන්ම ගමේ ආර්ථිකය කඩා වැටුණා. රජයේ වියදම් කරන මේ ප්‍රාග්ධන වැඩසටහන් වලින් ගම් මට්ටමේ ව්‍යාපාරිකයන් ගණනාවගේ වැඩ කටයුතු නැවතුණා. සමහර ප්‍රදේශවල සංචාරක ව්‍යාපාරයේ කඩා වැටීමෙන් උත් තවත් හානියක් සිදු වුණා. එහෙනම් ගමේ මට්ටමේ දිස්ත්‍රික්ක මට්ටමෙන් ආර්ථිකය අදිත් නගා සිටවන ව්‍යාපාර අපි ක්‍රියා කරගෙන යන එකක් එන අවුරුද්දට පේන හැටියට සංචාරක සංඛ්‍යාව 2018 හා සමාන වෙන්න ඉඩ තියෙනවා. දෙවනුව තියෙන්නේ ඒ බිම් මට්ටම ආර්ථිකයට යලිත් ක්‍රියා කරන මේ වැඩසටහන. මේකේ තියෙනවා ආයතන ගණනාවක් මල්ටි ඒජන්සිස්. අපි මුදල් මේ සැරේ වෙන් කළා තියෙනවා පළමුවෙන්ම අපේ විමාධිගත අයවැය හැටියට. විමාධිගත අයවැය අපි දෙන්නේ හැම දිස්ත්‍රික්කයකටම. විදේශ ආධාරයෙන් ලැබුණු ව්‍යාකෘති ගණනාවක් ඔසියල්ලම වාගේ නැවතුණා 20 21 22 වෙන අවස්ථාවේ. දැන් ඒව ආරම්භ කරන්නට බලාපොරොත්තු වෙන්නේ. එහෙනම් මේ තියෙන විශාල වැඩ කොටස.
Now following more news of the President, President Ranil Wickremesinghe held discussions with members of Parliament representing the Tamil community from the north and east today at the Presidential Secretariat. The discussion focused on various matters including the provision of land rights for the people in the northern and eastern provinces, the implementation of laws related to resettlement and reconciliation, and the challenges faced by Sri Lankans in refugee camps in India. Additionally, issues concerning district development in the northern and eastern provinces have also been discussed during the meeting. The members of Parliament from the northern and eastern provinces including R. Sampanthan, S. Rasamanikyam, Karunakaran, T. Kalayarasan and Kulasingham Dilipan attended the meeting. Also, Minister of Justice Dr. Vijaydas Rajapaksa stated, and State Minister of Higher Education Dr. Suren Raghavan and secretaries of various ministries attended the meeting. Now, among the most affected by Sri Lanka's economic crisis were the employees of the country's small to medium-scale enterprises who saw their disposable incomes deteriorate while being pushed into unemployment. As we move on into 2024, Central Bank Governor Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe is of the view that the government should do more to support the low-income earners so affected through the country's many development projects. Speaking to Indivari Amuwatta during our current affairs program at Hyde Park on AdaDerana 24, the central bank chief further claimed that the tax net has to be broadened to encompass all who can afford to pay the taxes. To this extent, Dr. Nandalal Veerasinghe suggests that there should not be tax exemptions to any industrial sector while implementing strong institutional reforms for tax collecting authorities to ensure that the revenue targets are hit.
We're talking about development reforms and how the central bank is supporting, but what efforts do you expect the government also to contribute to have an inclusive and equitable development process in the country?
If you look at the economic growth, especially during the crisis, with the high inflation and economic contraction, a lot of people lost employment in the SME sectors. In that kind of situation, who were the worst affected people in this country are the poor. In this kind of situation, first group of people government has responsibility to look after are the low-income people, those who are fallen into poverty. That is why it's important that government ability to support these people in terms of some kind of social safety net to protect their, at least make them sustainable living and at least give some support from the government, from the taxpayer. That is why tax policy is something, reallocation of resources, collect taxes from people who can afford and use their resources to support people who are worst affected. That's why equity principle in terms of taxation.
What do you think this tax policy should be for Sri Lanka? Are you happy with the current structure?
In my view, there shouldn't be any exemptions to certain industry sectors. It has to be fair, broad base, and if that is tax is 18% VAT, everyone should be covered, is liable to pay value-added tax, and only exception for exporters. They are not supposed to pay value-added tax. Less exemption, it will be better for the collection, it will be simple, and it will be much better and also fair and equitable. Secondly, even income tax. Obviously, high-income people should be paying higher taxes, and also it's important part, as a citizen, there is a responsibility to make their contribution to the economy, to the country as a taxpayer. But what we see is that even we have 8.5 million labor force in this country. Tax files, I was told, is about much less, even all taxpayers less than 500,000 out of 8.5 million workforce, which means larger portion of employment, businesses, workforce outside the tax net. That is why we have these very high taxes. I certainly would agree with everyone. This certain current tax rates are high, but tax collection is still not sufficient. Ideally, we need to go to a regime where tax rates are low, which is basically people who are having the burden paying taxes should have a individually, corporately, firm-wise, they should have lower tax rates, but everyone else, burden should be shared fairly, equally among everyone. So for example, that's where, a lot of professionals say, I am paying too many taxes, but I don't see, I say, you go and see what you get from the government, education, health, your education, your children's education, your safety, all these things are taxpayer money. But I agree, because if you don't like to pay taxes, it's the best way to get people outside taxes into the taxes. If I can't afford to pay 30% of my income or 36% of my income, only to bring it down for me to encourage someone else outside to come in, then I can pay not 36% but less.
To share the burden among all
share
citizens.
The burden among equal. That's the equity principle.
But what about those who don't fall into the radar, Governor? This is also a big question in society today. Those who are evading totally of declaring their assets and income.
Tax evasion is a serious issue in this country. So that's why it's unfair for people who pay taxes paying much higher taxes, where some people who are evading tax, outside tax, are not paying any. This is where the strong reforms in the institutions, for example, inland revenue, the customs, tax collecting authority for the government should have a strong institutional reforms to ensure the systems and the information, and so that they can catch people who they can bring in people who are outside the net. Digitalization, information availability for those who are outside tax net and get them into tax net and get them pay taxes, so that burden should be lower than what we see now. So those things, there are certain procedures, programs are in place, but you need to bring it out technology, digital ID, less cash transaction, and no having two sets of books by the businesses. We know a lot of businesses have two sets of books, one for taxes and purpose, other one for their own business. Tax authority should be able to catch all these people, bring them into tax and make it equitable and fair for everyone.
Talking about ease of doing business and foreign related investments. Do you see that we are moving towards easing up the doing business environment in Sri Lanka, or necessary reforms taken to facilitate FDIs that will flow in after the debt restructuring process?
In terms of ease of doing business, there's a lot to do in my view. There are separate government agencies doing that. I know there's a program and initiative by certain agencies to make it easier. But there's a long way to go. I think my view still in this country it's not easy to do business. A lot of bureaucratic red tapes, a lot of procedures, some corruption, all these things are happening. That's not easy. So that is a process that will take place and that should take place. This is where if you read important ones in the Governance and Corruption report by the IMF that was published, that's a great thing that was published. That report identifies a lot of areas that need to be improved and needs important reforms so that will make it easier for people to do business in this country. Those are important ones. Still, I think I can see there's a lot of things to be done.
For 2024, how would you leave a message for our people?
When I took over, it was a car going down the slope without control, going to crash, and now we have been able to stabilize that, and we are going back to start the recovery, coming back up the slope. That's why 11.5% goes 1.5% already the recovery started. So going forward, we need to continue on steady long-term basis. This 1.5 will have with 3%, then all long-term basis 3 to 5%, which means we are on the right path. We are moving in the right direction. We need to ensure we go in this direction on a steady, continuous basis without falling into a earlier bad path and bad policies. That's why it's important for us to ensure whole country will be moving in the same direction.
Now, meanwhile, Russian ambassador in Colombo, Levan Jagarian, highlights that the decision to collaborate with Rosatom for the establishment of a small nuclear power plant is up to Sri Lanka's government. Addressing a media briefing today, the Russian envoy said nuclear energy could be an appropriate alternative energy source for Sri Lanka. Meanwhile, the Russian ambassador also spoke on Russian tourist arrivals in 2024, revealing that they expect 200,000 Russian tourists to arrive in Sri Lanka by February next year due to increased flight operations by Russian airlines to the Katunayake and Mattala international airports.
Recently, there was a very big delegation from my country from 6th till 8th of December. It was headed by Nikolai Patrushev, the chief advisor of the President Putin for security issues. He had meetings with President Vikramasinghe, with Mr. Gunaratne. They had very good talks, very good negotiations, and we have some ideas. Hopefully, we will be able to implement some of them. We, of course, understand that Sri Lanka is under pressure from some third countries, but as a sovereign country, we do believe that Sri Lanka is able to continue its independent foreign policy. I think it's better address your side. After coming here, I just raised this issue in many meetings when we expressed our readiness to start discussions to set up small nuclear power plant, just 110 megawatts, 2 blocks, both floating and maybe on the soil. And my message, my key point was that you need alternative source of power. Don't rely only on coal, don't rely only on just LNG or whatever, on wind. Look, climate changes, or just solar. You need this nuclear power plant. And also, by the way, we have very good and fruitful cooperation with your neighboring countries, not only with Bangladesh, Rupur, with India, Kudam Kalam. We started our cooperation with Myanmar. We have very good cooperation with Turkey, with Iran. So Rosatom is #1. But it's up to your government. It's your sovereign decision. You have the right to choose. It's up to you. Russia is officially is #2 in terms of tourism because Indians are #1. Of course, maybe, I don't know. But I see, and you also, a lot of Russians coming here to Colombo Katunayake Airport, to Mattala Airport, a lot of Azur Air and Aeroflot coming here to Colombo, and Red Wings coming to Mattala. And we expect by next February, 200,000 tourists will come here, total number. And Russians enjoy their presence in Sri Lanka, and there is no need to explain why. And about Mattala Airport, there were different ideas, different proposals. Just we also expressed ours. It's under consideration. Once again, it's your side to decide, Sri Lankan side.
Now moving on to other news, in order to realize the country's true potential as a logistics hub, Minister of Ports, Shipping and Aviation Nimal Siripala de Silva revealed several plans and proposals of the government to revitalize the country's ports, shipping and aviation industries. Among those plans are the proposed expansion of the Palali Airport, development of the Kankasanture, Galle, Trincomalee harbours, the completion of the Colombo Port's Eastern Terminal and the restructuring of Sri Lankan Airlines. For more on this, let's hear from Minister of Ports, Shipping and Aviation, Nimal Siripala de Silva, on our special segment 2024 and Beyond.
In the maritime sector, we are expecting more cruise vessels to come to our Colombo port. According to the information I have received, there are 32 ships. They have confirmed that they will be coming to this port. And several development projects for the container handling is being done at the moment. And it is our endeavor to ensure that we complete the Eastern Terminal by the end of the year 2024, which is a deep berth terminal which will attract many larger vessels to this port. In the same time, we are bringing port community system which is available in most of the developed ports in Sri Lanka in order to bring utilization to this port and make this port competitive and efficient in par with the other ports in the Indian Ocean. Kankasanture harbour, we have called for expression of interest from the private sector to develop that harbour, and the goal as well as the Trincomalee harbour, also we have several plans to develop both harbours. In the aviation sector, as the debt restructuring process is almost over, the JICA funding would be available to us in order to complete the Terminal 2 of the Katunayaka International Airport. The Palali Airport, we are making a profit now, and we are hopeful that we will be able to expand the runway to enable the 320 aircraft to land in Palali Airport in time to come, and we are inviting the private sector to participate in a very transparent tender procedure. And Mattala Airport, already some investors have shown their interest to take the management, and a committee appointed by the cabinet is evaluating the proposals submitted by various parties, and I am very confident that we will be able to select a partner who will run this airport profitably, and we will be able to get at least 400,000 passengers within a period of 5 years. There is a need for the Sri Lankan airline to be restructured and ensure that it will not be a burden to our economy and the country anymore. The process has already commenced in order to find a strong partner to run this airline in partnership with Sri Lanka. So the expression of interest has already been called, and by mid-January it will be closed. I am hopeful by end of March, April, we will be able to conclude this restructuring process and ensure that the Sri Lankan airline will be a very vibrant airline.
Now in other news, Sri Lanka's intelligence services held a discussion today with the representatives of the Thai embassy and several parents of the Sri Lankans reported to be detained in Myanmar under a terrorist group. It has been reported that more than 25 Sri Lankans who went to Myanmar using various means are being currently held captive by the said terrorist group. Meanwhile, the Criminal Investigation Department has started investigations to arrest a Sri Lankan who is allegedly in direct contact with the said terrorist group.
Recently, it was reported that over 25 Sri Lankans who illegally entered Myanmar through its border with Thailand have been captured by a Burmese terrorist group. It was revealed that they are being forcibly detained in a terrorist camp in the Mayawadi town in Myanmar, which is currently controlled by ethnic armed groups. The Sri Lankans detained in the terrorist camp in Mayawadi are reported to be working as cyber slaves. Before this incident was brought to light, reports were published on how several Indian nationals were also subjected to similar conditions by the same Burmese terrorist group. Recently, a series of photographs were released showing how Sri Lankans were tortured by the terrorist organization within the Mayawadi terror camp. Speaking to AdaDerana, a young woman incarcerated in the same Burmese camp also explained the harsh experiences they had to face.
අපි ඉන්නේ මියන්මාර් වල ඇත්තටම අපි ආවේ ජොබ් එකකට මෙතන ඔක්කොම කරන්නේ ආමි එකෙන් සමහරවිට අපිට මේ කරදර කරනවා අපිව මරලා දැම්මොත් එහෙම අපේ අම්මලා තාත්තලාට මං හිතන්නේ මිනිහක්වත් යන්නේ නැති වෙයි කියන්න තියෙන අපව කොහොම හරි බේරගන්න කියලා තමයි.
Meanwhile, a special discussion was held yesterday in this regard led by the head of State Intelligence Services. A representative of the Myanmar embassy in Sri Lanka and the parents of 5 people detained by the Burmese terrorist group also joined the discussion. The relatives revealed that the detained Sri Lankans went in search of employment opportunities in the IT sector. It was also revealed that a Sri Lankan in Dubai who is connected with the victims online directed them to work in Myanmar.
දරුවෝ ගියේ මේ එක්කෙනෙක් කතා කරලා දුන්නේ ඒ කතා කරපු එක්කෙනා ඉන්නේ ඩුබායි වල එයාගේ මාර්ගයෙන් තමයි ළමයි ගියේ ළමයි 3මාරක් දුන්නා යාලට ඊට පස්සේ ළමයි දැන් ගිහිල්ලා මාස 3කට වැඩි අපි ගෙන්න ගන්න ඇව්වාම ලක්ෂ 27ක් ඕනේ කිව්වා දැන් එහෙම දීලා ගෙන්නන්න ක්‍රමයකුත් නැහැ මොන දෙයක් වෙයිද කියලා අපි දන්නේ නැහැ කොහොම හරි දැන් සති දෙකක් විතර වෙන්න වෙනවා ළමයි ගැන කිසිම තොරතුරක් නැහැ.
Further, it has been confirmed that the Sri Lankan in Dubai is in direct contact with the Burmese terrorist organization and that he directs people to the terrorist group. Officials of the Human Trafficking, Smuggling Investigation and Maritime Crime Investigation Division of the Criminal Investigation Department have started investigations into the matter.
Welcome back. Now in your business news, taking a look at the latest inflation statistics. The National Consumer Price Index-based headline inflation in Sri Lanka increased in November to 2.8% from 1% recorded in the previous month. The Department of Census and Statistics said that year-on-year inflation of the food group increased to negative 2.2% in November, while year-on-year inflation in the non-food group increased to 7.1%.
The rate of inflation as measured by the National Consumer Price Index on a year-on-year basis increased to 2.8% in November this year from 1% recorded in October. According to the Department of Census and Statistics, year-on-year inflation in the food group increased to negative 2.2% during November from negative 5.2% recorded in October, while the non-food group inflation increased from a rate of 6.3% in October to 7.1% in November. For the month of November, the contribution to inflation by food commodities on a year-on-year basis was negative 1.01%. The contribution of the non-food group was recorded at 3.86%, owing to positive changes in value of the alcoholic beverages, tobacco and narcotics category, and the housing, water, electricity, gas and other fuels category, which collectively recorded a contribution of 3.33%.
Now in other business news, the Colombo Stock Exchange ended higher today, aided by gains in consumer staples and industrial stocks. The CSE All-Share Index settled up 0.19% at 10,623.51, while the S&P Sri Lanka 20 ended up 0.24% at 3,052.68 points. CT Holdings PLC and Expo Lanka Holdings PLC were the top gainers on the CSE All-Share Index, rising 9.51% and 1.08% respectively. Trading volume on the CSE All-Share Index fell to 19.6 million shares from 323.3 million shares in the previous session. The equity market's turnover fell to 1.24 billion rupees from 5.06 billion rupees in the previous session. Foods and staples retailing sector was the top contributor to the market turnover today, while the diversified financial sector was the second highest contributor. Meanwhile, foreign investors were net sellers, offloading stocks worth 819.5 million rupees, while domestic investors were net buyers, purchasing shares worth 1.02 billion rupees. Now let's take a look at the rupee exchange rates for the day. Now taking you to some corporate developments, UP Electronic Enterprises Private Limited, a leading electrical engineering service provider in the country, secured the Bronze Award at the National Industry Excellence Award 2023, held under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe. With that, let's take a look at the corporate's new segment for the day.
One of the leading electrical engineering service providers in Sri Lanka, UP Electronic Enterprises Private Limited, recently received a bronze award at the National Industry Excellence Awards 2023. Accordingly, the award was received by the owner of the company, Upul Gunaratna Jayatilaka, at the Nelumpokuna Mahinda Rajapaksha Theatre under the patronage of President Ranil Wickremesinghe. Further, the recipient of the award and the owner of the company, Upul Gunaratna Jayatilaka, has been providing electrical engineering services to many leading organizations, including the Ceylon Electricity Board, for over 40 years. Meanwhile, in a bid to celebrate the outstanding performance of their managerial team, Janashakti Life, a leading life insurance provider of Sri Lanka, recently launched the Janashakti Life Great Manager Awards. In addition, the event further marked the launch of the award criteria, setting the awards for recognizing excellence among Janashakti Life's managerial team. Further, this prestigious event was graced by former Sri Lanka cricket captain Mahela Jayawardena. In the meantime, the debut cookbook, Jayaflower by cook and author Tasha Marika, was officially launched in Colombo yesterday. The cookbook Jayaflower highlights the authentic Sri Lankan recipes as well as the ethnic heritage and culture of the island. The focus of this book is to represent the diverse ethnic heritage of the country, highlighting each community's impact on the island's food history and culture.
Now, with less than 4 days till Christmas, let's remind ourselves that the true spirit of Christmas lies when everyone values each other's worth. With that in mind, let's take a look into our seasonal segment, A Message of Hope.
First of all, let me wish you all a very happy Christmas in advance. We are preparing ourselves, irrespective of religion, for the celebration of Christmas. It is true, my dear brothers and sisters, we will live forevermore. We will live happily. We will be very, very prosperous if we truly live the spirit of Christmas. This Christmas brings an important message to all the people. The Holy Scriptures would say, Jesus came among his people. Jesus accepted everyone as their own. This is the spirit of Christmas, my dear brothers and sisters. God comes among his people. Everyone is his own child. And secondly, what does this Christmas mean to you and me? How can we make this Christmas a joyful one, a hopeful one, a celebration that could bring us prosperity? When God came among us, when Jesus came among us, he came among the people who did not accept him, who did not recognize him, who rejected him, and also to the people who accepted him. This shows the divinity is that who accepts everybody with their importance. For God, man was so important. He gives the dignity of man. I strongly believe, my dear brothers and sisters, this is an important message of Christmas for this year. Now let us become the agents of Jesus' birth to this humanity, to the Sri Lankans. Jesus came among us to show every human person is important. Every person has got his own value and worth. Whomever we meet, we have to recognize, meet them, relate to them, thinking that person is important. Whether he accepts you or whether he rejects you, whether he loves you or hates you. If we do this one, I strongly believe the spirit of Christmas will give us life and build a human society which experiences love and brotherhood. Let us make the other person important. This is the spirit of Christmas.
With that, we wrap up tonight's edition of AdaDerana First at 9. Stay in touch with us on www.adaderana.lk for the latest developments around the clock. Thank you. Have a great night.
For news and information you can trust 24 hours a day, visit AdaDerana.lk.